And finally, the time has come again. We finally have another Cosori here on our table. After the big success of the Cosori XXL, the manufacturer has obviously decided to launch a few more devices, and here is one of them, the Dual Blaze. And as the name suggests, the heat comes from several sides. But more on that in a moment. Of course, we've tested this device completely for you, and you will find out everything you need to know in this video, so stay tuned. We'll start with a brief overview.
The Cosori Dual Blaze comes with an output of 1700 watts and has a capacity of 6.4 liters, which is slightly more than a standard air fryer. You should be able to make 4 to 6 portions with it, according to the manufacturer. And anyone who knows the channel knows that we always dial that down a bit. We think the manufacturers are a bit optimistic in that regard. Expect more like 3 to 4 portions. In terms of its operation, we have an integrated touch display. It looks quite good and works reasonably well. But as is often the case with these appliances, you have to be a bit careful. You sometimes don't find the pressure point, but in our opinion, it's still much better than most low-cost devices. As far as the presets are concerned, there are a total of 12 predefined programs. 6, let's call them classic programs, 4 somewhat broader ones, and then there are the keep warm and reheating functions. The temperature range of the Cosori goes from 80 to 205 degrees Celsius. Honestly, we don't know what these 5 degrees are for in the end. The usual temperature range for these appliances typically is 80 to 200 degrees. As far as the timer is concerned, we can go up to 60 minutes. Another important point is that many of you want to put the appliance away after you're done with it. Many of you don't want to have it in the kitchen all the time, and the manufacturer has built in a few things to make it easier for you. The first thing is that we have transportation handles at the bottom of the appliance. This makes it easier to store it away. The appliance is also relatively light at around 6.2 kilograms. The Cosori also has 4 non-slip feet underneath, and this may sound relatively small, but it is a pretty important point. When you use the appliance, or even just use the drawer, you push the appliance back and forth all the time, and that's a real pain in the neck when you have an appliance like this. So make sure that there are non-slip feet underneath. And in this case, we do have some. Of course, the dimensions are also important for you. After all, you have to fit it somewhere in the kitchen, and you're definitely in luck with this appliance because it's not particularly big. We have 35 times 28.5 centimeters in height and width, and 38 centimeters in regards to its depth. This makes the device relatively compact. Next up is the cable length. This is also something that many of you find important. That's why we always measure it ourselves. In the case of this device, it's around 1 meter, which is more or less average when it comes to these air fryers. Next, let's move on to the features, and the appliance has quite a few of them. So let's go through them together. The first feature we want to discuss is the 360 Thermo IQ technology. Well, yes, that sounds rather fancy, but all it really means is that the food in here is supposed to be cooked twice as fast as in a normal oven. And yeah, here comes the first surprise. Naturally, we tested it, and it's not only true, it's even faster than that. But now comes the second surprise. We reviewed lots and lots of air fryers up to this point, and it has to be said that this appliance is not really any faster than other air fryers. The others are also much faster than the oven. So it ain't really something special, except that Cosori has said, okay, we'll give it a fancy advertising name. Let's move on to the second feature, and this is actually the real special feature of this appliance. There is a lower heating element. This means that we not only have the classic air fry mode, but can also add heat from below. And whether this actually means that you no longer have to turn the food, or perhaps can even prepare steaks or something like that, is something we tested out for you, of course. But more about that later when it comes to cooking. The last big feature is the VSync app. This allows you to connect to the air fryer via Wi-Fi. It includes recipes, of course, but you can also use it to control the air fryer remotely. And to conclude our little overview, we'd like to say a few words about the scope of delivery. In this case, there's not much to say. It's not really that extensive. We actually only have the tray and the mesh inlay included. At least the manufacturer kindly throws in a recipe booklet with 30 recipes. But that's about it. By the way, if you're interested in the product, take a look at the description below the video. Next, we'll get down to the essentials, namely our practical test. And as always, we'll start it as you should at home. First of all, you should place the appliance on a heat-resistant surface and leave some space around it so that the air can circulate properly. Then it's best to clean the appliance once. At least wipe the tray and the mesh inlay once with a damp cloth, and then you're good to go. If you're still not satisfied, you can run the appliance at 180 or 200 degrees for 10 minutes to allow any odors to dissipate. After that, you're ready. The device is very easy to operate. Simply switch on the appliance and enter the desired values. The temperature can be set in 5-degree increments and the time in 1-minute increments. It also works a little faster if you hold down the button. Then you don't have to wait so long. If you want to choose one of the presets, simply click on the corresponding symbol. We also noticed that the time and temperature are displayed at the same time. This is actually not the case with every appliance. With some others, it alternates, which is a bit annoying. You always have to wait until the desired value is displayed. You don't have to do that here though. Both are displayed at the same time. You can also control all the functions of the air fryer remotely via the app. In other words, you can set the time, temperature, and so on, and can also monitor the cooking progress. You can see how long the air fryer has been running, for example. And what we also find particularly interesting is the fact that the recipes in the app are also integrated into the system. This means that when you set a recipe, the recommended time and temperature are set automatically. Okay, now we know how to use the thing. The next step is to cook something with it. Before that, we have an important tip for you though. Don't rely on the presets. Check it from time to time to see if the food is ready or if it needs a little more time to cook. The presets are only guidelines. And if you do it like this, you'll get good cooking results. So let's get into detail now. Fries were crispy on the outside and fluffy on the inside. Very potatoy. You have to be a little careful that they don't get too dry. But other than that, the result is good and tasty. The same goes for chicken nuggets. A new addition to our test are potato wedges. We have a good, relatively even result here too. Nice and crispy on the outside and at the same time fluffy and potatoy on the inside. And I think you can see that here too. A very visually appealing result. We have also added baked rolls to our menu. That's something that many people want to do in these appliances as well. The rolls baked up perfectly, golden on the outside and hot and fluffy on the inside. We opened them as well to see if they were good in there. And yes, they were. So pretty satisfying result here as well. Next, we have a classic dish that you absolutely have to make in these appliances. Chicken wings. In our case, the result was very appealing. Everything was cooked through and tasted good. From our point of view, there was nothing to complain about. Next up, veggies. You need to be a little careful with this appliance when it comes to those. The cardinal rule here is, what's cooked in the pot should stay in the pot. If you just put plain broccoli in there, for example, it will get burnt very quickly. Our tip, if you want to make veggies in there, then please try a dish that turns out well in such an appliance. Roasted vegetables, for example. But then you'll also need to add a little oil. Many of you also want to bake something with these appliances, and that's why we always make a few muffins in our test. Everything turned out well in this case, and fluffed up nicely with a beautiful color. There was nothing to complain about. So now comes the big moment, the major test with this device. We wanted to know whether the lower heating element in there ensures that we no longer have to turn the food, and whether it might even ensure that we can make something like steaks in an appliance like this. So we got a pre-marinated steak from the grocery store and just put it in here. So what about the results? Let us put it this way. The steak has turned out in a way that seems edible. In other words, both the outside and the inside were cooked to a point where it was okay, but it was a little pale all over. That still has to be said. When you put it on a griddle or on the grill, it just looks and tastes a bit different. However, it was fine in the end. We wouldn't want to complain too much about that. After all, it was only in the air fryer and not in the pan or on the grill. If we take that into consideration, it was quite good. Another thing that helped was the lower heating element, of course. We didn't turn the steak and let the heat work from below. It wasn't properly seared at the bottom, but at least it was comparable to the top side of the steak. So something's happened at least. Usually, if you don't turn your food, you will get more inconsistent results. That doesn't mean that you don't have to turn your food anymore, but it does mean that you have to turn it less. That's a good thing in itself. So the lower heating element does help. However, if you want a steak that really tastes like a real steak from a steakhouse, you have to stick to standard cooking practices. In other words, sear the steak beforehand and then put it in the air fryer. In a nutshell, we can say that the cooking results were good. There wasn't really anything to complain about, and the appliance can do a little bit more than most standard appliances, namely because of the lower heating element. Next, let's talk about the handling. A key problem with many appliances that use a mesh inlay is that the inlay becomes loose when you shake the food in it or when you want to put it on the plate. It may even fall onto it. That's why we give those kinds of appliances a good shake to see if it comes loose. But everything was fine with this appliance in the end. The inlay didn't fall out. What's more, the whole thing makes a very high-quality impression. It also looks very well designed. So you definitely have a good feeling here. Another point that is always important is the volume, of course. Unfortunately, this device is one of the inferior ones in that regard. The noise level here is around 67 decibels. You can hear the airflow very clearly, and it makes a very fan-like noise. All in all, we think that this is the weak point of the appliance. it could certainly be better. The situation is different when it comes to its heat development. This appliance is probably one of the best we have ever had. In short, the handle stays cold, the display stays cold, and the rest gets warm at most, including the drawer itself. You have to be a bit careful at the rear end with the air outlet. Aside from that, it was really good. Let's move on to the workmanship. We would like to make one point first, and that is the appearance. If you look from a little further away and look at the design, the materials, the arrangement of the display, and so on, the device makes a great impression. But if you take a closer look, you'll realize that there are a few little flaws, like these gaps. They don't seem to fit all too well. And then there's the problem with the drawer. Although it closes properly, it's not quite as solid. There could definitely be a lot less wobbling involved. On the other hand, the display looks very high quality and also seems to be fitted in well. The plastic also looks nice. Maybe a dent here and there, but otherwise we have a good quality overall. Okay, let's move on to the cleaning of the device. That's a short point in this case, because there's not much to say. The tray and mesh inlay are dishwasher proof. That's the most important thing, because it saves a lot of time. And the results from the dishwasher were also good. You may still find one or two spots after one go, but on the whole, you can't complain, especially compared to other appliances. Let's come to the conclusion. We reviewed a mid-priced appliance, which made a good impression overall. Cooking results were good, operation and handling were good, and the overall finish was fitting. The heat management is even to be praised. The volume could be improved on, but the digital approach with the app control and recipe integration is very cool. We also really liked the steak and lower heating element. The effect was a little limited, but the bottom line is that the dual blaze can still be recommended for its price point. If you are looking for an air fryer with a little more than 5 liters for the family, which does a solid job, then the dual blaze might be of interest to you. With this in mind, if you're interested in the product, then take a look at the description below the video. You can find the link there. And if you're still not sure which device is the right one for you, then take a look at this video here. There we compare different air fryers with each other, and that will hopefully help you to find the right appliance.